The Greyjoy Rebellion seems like a small footnote in the history of Westerosi conflicts. But in A Song of Ice and Fire, even the smallest wars can create shockwaves that shape the entire story. Let's take a closer look. Hi everyone, this is Sheen. Welcome to Friends of the First Men. On this channel, we discuss theories related to the Song of Ice and Fire. Welcome. Conflicts in George R.R. Martin's world rarely exist in isolation. Even minor wars create unexpected alliances, rivalries, and long-term political effects. Take the War of the Ninepenny Kings. On the surface, it was a small conflict compared to the major Blackfire rebellions. But its second-order consequences were enormous. It forged lasting friendships between the Starks, Tullys, and Arryns. Aerys Targaryen, who would later become the Mad King, found his future hand in Tywin Lannister. These threads, woven quietly into history, set the stage for Robert's rebellion decades later. We see a similar pattern in Fire and Blood. Daemon Targaryen and Corlys Velaryon fought the Triarchy for control of the Stepstones. The conflict seemed localized, ending when Daemon killed Kragus Drahar in single combat. But this feud later helped Otto Hightower forge an alliance between the Greens and the Triarchy during the Dance of the Dragons, an alliance that led to one of the most devastating moments of the war. The Battle of the Gullet, where Jacaerys Velaryon, Rhaenyra's heir, was killed along with his dragon. Once again, a seemingly small conflict had transformative consequences. George R.R. Martin does not write war casually. Conflict must mean something. Which brings us to the Greyjoy Rebellion. In 289 AC, 6 years after Robert Baratheon took the Iron Throne, Balon Greyjoy declared himself King of the Iron Islands. His reasoning was simple. Robert's hold on the realm was supposedly weak, and the great houses were weary of war. The Ironborn had not fought in Robert's rebellion, leaving their fleet intact and ready for a strike on major ports. But even by Ironborn standards, the logic behind Balon's rebellion is deeply flawed. Before exploring why, let's look at what happened. The Ironborn launched a surprise attack on Lannisport, burning the Lannister fleet. But soon after, Stannis Baratheon, backed by the Red Wine fleet, met them at sea and crushed their forces. Robert summoned the great lords of Westeros. The invasion of the Iron Islands was swift. Balon's two eldest sons, Roderick and Maron, were killed in battle. The last surviving son, Theon, was taken to Winterfell as a ward. And that was the end of it. Balon lost all three heirs, yet Robert allowed him to remain Lord of the Iron Islands. Politically, the realm barely changed. Compared to the far-reaching consequences of earlier conflicts, the Greyjoy Rebellion looked strangely insignificant, at least on the surface. Who benefited from the rebellion? Robert Baratheon benefited, yes. He demonstrated the strength of his rule. But his alliances with the Starks, Arryns, Tullys, and Lannisters already made his position strong. The true beneficiaries lie elsewhere. One is in the Iron Islands, the other is in King's Landing. Let's begin with the obvious one. Beneficiary 1, Euron Greyjoy. The first clear beneficiary is Euron Greyjoy. Balon's reasoning for rebellion makes little sense. Apart from the Reach and Dorne, every major house is tied to Robert through alliance or political interest. Even the Tyrells, who opposed Robert during his rebellion, never fought him directly. They staged a symbolic, bloodless siege of Storm's End, careful not to offend the man they suspected might become king. A Greyjoy uprising only gives the Reach an excellent opportunity to show loyalty to Robert, which they do, both in the naval battle and in the invasion of the Iron Islands. So where did the idea for rebellion come from? This is where Euron becomes important. Euron is manipulative, charismatic, and deeply aware of his brother's weaknesses. He thrives on chaos and excels at planting ideas in the minds of others. Victarion Greyjoy, who led the raid on Lannisport, is described by Martin as dumb as a stump. He is a loyal warrior, not a tactician capable of conceiving such a daring maneuver. The bold Lannisport raid feels much closer to Euron's style, clever, destructive, and provocative. And the rebellion's outcomes benefit Euron significantly. Roderick dies. Maron dies. Theon becomes a hostage and is effectively removed as a future ruler. This clears Euron's path to the Seastone chair. Even after Euron's later exile for raping Victarion's wife, he remains the most dangerous and capable candidate to rule. And indeed, when Balon eventually dies, Euron returns and wins the King's Moot. Did Euron directly push Balon into rebellion? Possibly. The logic, the outcome, and Euron's personality all support this. But Euron is not the only figure who gains from the rebellion. There is another, whose benefit is less obvious but far more politically significant. To understand how Varys benefits from the Greyjoy Rebellion, we must look east toward Braavos. At around the same time the rebellion ends, Daenerys and Viserys Targaryen are expelled from the Sea Lord's palace, the house with the red door that Daenerys remembers so deeply. In A Game of Thrones, Daenerys says she was about 5 years old when this happened. This places their expulsion in the same year as the rebellion, and this moment was not random. It came after the collapse of a highly significant political pact, the Targaryen-Martell marriage alliance. In the books, we learn that House Martell agreed to marry Viserys to Arianne Martell. This was not a secret arrangement between exiles. It was witnessed by the Sea Lord of Braavos, signifying Braavosi interest in Westerosi affairs. The pact was signed by Oberyn Martell for House Martell and by Willem Darry for the Targaryen children. This alliance would have provided Viserys with legitimacy, political backing from Dorne, and subtle support from Braavos. It gave the Targaryens a viable path toward restoration. But then comes the Greyjoy Rebellion. Robert crushes it swiftly. The realm appears unified and stable. From Braavos' perspective, harboring Targaryen exiles suddenly becomes politically dangerous. Supporting Viserys is no longer a strategic asset. It is a liability. At the same time, Willem Darry dies, removing the children's last Westerosi protector in Braavos. And without Braavosi support, the Martell Pact collapses. Doran Martell, cautious by nature, sees no realistic path for Viserys, so the children are expelled. Daenerys believes Darry's death was the cause, and perhaps it was. But politically, the timing aligns perfectly with Braavos stepping away from any potential involvement in a future Targaryen restoration. And this is where Varys and Illyrio enter the story. Roughly a year after their expulsion, Viserys and Daenerys fall under Illyrio's protection. By then, they are desperate, out of money, vulnerable, and without allies. This is exactly the state Varys needs them in. A Viserys backed by Dorne and protected by Braavos would be politically constrained. He would never be desperate enough to act rashly. He would never fall fully into Illyrio's orbit. But a Viserys with no allies? A Viserys who believes the throne is slipping away? That is a perfect pawn. There are theories that Varys hoped Viserys would invade Westeros with a Dothraki army, creating enough chaos for Varys to introduce Aegon as the savior who restores stability. Whether that exact plan was intended or not, Viserys and Daenerys clearly become tools for Illyrio and Varys after 289 AC. And none of this could have happened if the Targaryens had remained under Braavos' protection. So, did Varys engineer the rebellion itself? Probably not. But could he have taken advantage of the rebellion's political consequences? Very possibly. A subtle clue appears in A Feast for Crows. When Cersei learns of Balon's death, her small council cannot even say who Balon's heir is. Cersei thinks to herself, Varys would have known. Varys always knew. This suggests that Varys had informants even in the Iron Islands, a place notoriously closed to outsiders. If he could maintain a network there, he could have influenced Balon in subtle ways to declare war. Let's go over the motivations again. The Targaryens are expelled from Braavos. The Martell Pact collapses. The children become vulnerable, and they fall straight into Illyrio's hands. 289 AC becomes the moment that places Daenerys and Viserys onto the path Varys needs them to walk. So who truly benefited from the Greyjoy Rebellion? Euron Greyjoy, whose path to the Seastone Chair becomes dramatically easier after the deaths of his nephews and Theon's removal. And Varys and Illyrio, whose long-term plan gains momentum when the Targaryen children are expelled from Braavos, cut off from Dorne, and left with nowhere to go except into Illyrio's care. Or perhaps the rebellion was simply a product of Greyjoy pride, and these two men were merely the fortunate beneficiaries of its consequences. As with so many things in Westeros, the truth is hidden in the shadows. What do you think? Was the rebellion influenced by unseen hands? Or was it Greyjoy impulsiveness that just happened to benefit others? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. That's all for now. See you next time.